This episode of Bullet Heaven was made using Pack-a-Punch SCART cables from Retro Gaming Cables, the Super SD System 3 from Stone Age Gamer, and the OSSC from Video Game Perfection. Nihon Busan Kabushiki Gaisha, or as they're more commonly known, Nichibutsu, isn't exactly a household name, but they have made a number of rather interesting shooting games over the course of their tenure. While some in the beginning were mere clones of Space Invaders and Galaxian, it wouldn't take long for Nichibutsu to form its own signature identity. Without prior knowledge of the company, it might surprise you to know that you've played one or several of their shooting games across the NES or PC Engine. Games like Magmax, Sagcross, and Armed F all came from Nichibutsu. Many more were relegated to arcades only, such as Tube Panic, Terra Force, and Radical Radial, all of which are available today via the Arcade Archive series. However, Nichibutsu is also most famed for one particular series, and it's one that has seen an unlikely resurgence in 2022, and that series is Cresta. Chapter 1. Moon Cresta. As a fixed vertical shooting game released in 1980, Moon Cresta would end up becoming one of Nichibutsu's most successful arcade games, and it's easy to see why. More than any other game in the Cresta series, a number of home ports would come to be released over the course of 39 years, including a wide range of European microcomputers, the Sharp X68K, Super Famicom, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, Windows PC CD-ROM, and most modern consoles by way of Hamster's Arcade Archive series. It was announced that Moon Cresta would also be included in the Sega Astro Mini V in 2022. Moon Cresta's gameplay is simple by today's standards, but in 1980 it was truly groundbreaking, differentiating itself from the likes of Namco's 1979 Galaxian and Taito's 1978 Space Invaders, both of which Nichibutsu rather infamously ripped off wholesale. Moon Cresta incorporated some fairly amazing, complex features. At the core of the gameplay is the ability for players to dock with and expand their ship, something that Namco would turn the tables with and end up borrowing in their own later Galaga in 1982. But it's still different than Moon Cresta's approach, which is simple. Players start with 3 lives, but each life is represented by a different ship. After 4 enemy waves, a docking sequence will initiate where players are tasked with combining with the next ship in line. If the player is using the number 1 ship, it will dock with number 2, and if the number 2 is in play, it will dock with number 3. If all of the player's ships are intact after 8 waves, all 3 can be combined into Moon Cresta's ultimate form. Care should be taken though. If the player fails to dock, they'll lose lives to the tune of how many were in play during the docking sequence. If 2 ships are combined, but crash, 2 lives will be lost. Ouch. But it went even further. While any one ship can only fire 1 shot or a salvo at a time, a docked ship gets an extra shot. This means that at its most complete, 3 shots can be fired in succession with a combined power of 5 bullets, giving the player an easier time to deal with their opposition. And this is welcome, as Moon Cresta is generally punishingly difficult. Of course, with a larger ship comes a larger hitbox, and Moon Cresta's aggressive enemy waves can make very short work of the player if they're not prepared. The Stage 1 ship is small, but often lacks the firepower to take on the swift, frantic waves the player will face off against right on the outset of the game. With a total of 10 waves, Moon Cresta's loops aren't especially long, but the game does go on forever and can last as long as the players can endure it. While the arcade version of Moon Cresta is represented well in the modern Arcade Archive series, a few classic home releases are worth mentioning. The Nichibutsu Arcade Classics line for both Super Famicom and PlayStation were released the same year and have unique Moon Cresta experiences. On Super Famicom, the arranged Moon Cresta with all new ship, enemy, and background designs is actually extremely playable, and one of our favorite overall. Meanwhile, on PlayStation, a greatly overhauled derivative called FSX, not to be confused with 1983's FSX or Space Fighter X, also by Nichibutsu, takes the original Moon Cresta formula and jacks everything way up with 8-way movement, robust enemy waves, a boss encounter, and the same classic docking system, albeit with enhanced, rebalanced fire patterns. All in all, no matter how you play it, Moon Cresta is a great starting point for what was to come. As an early infinite looper, the scoring in Moon Cresta is super simple. Shoot as many enemies of various point values as possible. There are neat bonuses though. The larger the ship piloted in the docking phase, the bigger the score will be. A point value is multiplied by time remaining to form the bonus. Moon Cresta's first extend occurs at 30,000 points, so these docking sequences are critical for a timely extend. The ACA version of the game also features online leaderboards as well as score attack and caravan timed modes, giving it the overall edge for scoring features. Moon Cresta isn't exactly a looker, but it has its own sense of style that we can appreciate from a game that's older than we are. The design choices are standouts for the era, and while there's no music in this release, its docking and loop jingles are super satisfying. The X68K, PlayStation, and PS2 versions are more or less on par with the arcade version, which comes as no surprise. The Super Famicom version is remarkably faithful as well, though the arrange mode looks much cooler. The PlayStation's FSX variant is also pretty sweet in this regard, though in the case of both it and the Super Famicom, the sound is more or less the same as the original. Chapter 2. Terra Cresta. Terra Cresta is a Tate vertical, wide-scrolling traditional shooting game that was first released to arcades in 1985. It also saw a number of home ports, including those found on the Famicom, NES, various European microcomputers, Sharp 68K, and PlayStation 2. Lastly, it would be released as an Arcade Archives entry in 2018. Like Moon Cresta, it will also be on the Astro City Mini V. As a full-on sequel to Moon Cresta, Terra Cresta has all of the upgrades one would expect of a game that would be released 5 years after its previous entry, with its innovative revamped gameplay taking center stage. It would also set the template for all of the games in the Cresta series that would follow, and even others outside of it. Terra Cresta has players take control of the Wing Gallibur, also described in-game as the Winger. The Winger shook things up when Terra Cresta first saw release, as more parts could be collected that added greater speed, additional firepower, and a layer of defense to the player's ship, but they needed to be found and released in order to do so. Every now and again, a port will appear with a number adjacent or surrounding it. Up to 4 of these points will need to be destroyed in order to launch the part inside. When docked, the new part will grant the player with 3 formation items, shown at the bottom of the screen. By pressing the button assigned to activating these items, the Winger will split into a multi-ship formation with a special attack pattern depending on how many ships have been combined into the main craft. These attack patterns are very strong and can be used to defeat tough enemies rather quickly. Some enemies can only be defeated by using a formation technique. So it's helpful to conserve these formations until they are needed. Collecting new parts will top off the player's formation stock though, so until all of these bits are fully combined, there's a nice flexibility available for liberal formation deployment. When all 5 parts are combined though, the Winger will transform into the invincible Firebird, which can crash into and destroy most enemy ships that it comes in contact with. This effect only lasts for a limited time though. All of the acquired parts will be invincible when the split formation is active, save for the Winger itself. If it is hit, the player will lose a life, and all of their parts. If the player is in a combined state though, getting hit will destroy the parts on the Winger instead of outright destroying it, and other parts will need to be found and collected again. If this sounds cool, it absolutely is, especially for 1985. While there are distinct phases to the gameplay, there are no actual stages here, just an endless looping game that allows players to go as far as they have the skill to do so, and, additionally, score giant amounts of points, nabbing extends in the process. But while it's definitely fun, it's also not a very easy game in the end. Dying reduces the player to a basic state, and with a checkpoint system in place, players may find it difficult to progress once they lose their buddies and end up disintegrating from an errant bullet. The Famicom and NES versions of the game adds a neat function though. Players are able to design the layout and shot pattern to their 5-ship formation, a limited but interesting precursor of great things to come. Like Moon Cresta before it, Terra Cresta's scoring aspects are simple. There are various enemies that will grant larger amounts of points when destroyed, but there aren't really any other bonuses to speak of, save for one. Shooting exploding air mines will burst shots out in multiple directions, which can catch and destroy enemies as well. Each enemy destroyed in this manner grants a 1,000-point bonus. As an infinite looper though, its simplicity works, as time and skill invariably leads to huge scores. Like Moon Cresta, the ACA version of the game features online leaderboards as well as score attack and caravan timed modes, giving it the overall edge for scoring features. A cut above Moon Cresta in pretty much every way, Terra Cresta is reasonably detailed with a decent sound set, generally speaking. Background elements are clear, enemies have a decent amount of personality despite their often generic designs, and the Caliber is pretty cool. The soundtrack is pretty catchy too, though it is on the limited side with just a couple of boss themes and one main gameplay track, which was rather uncharacteristically composed in a major key. As with many other Nichibutsu games, a jingle will play on respawn after death, but will change when the final life enters play. Nice touch. One thing we've noticed about Nichibutsu's music is the way they handled their approximation of a symbol. It's uncomfortably shrill and more than a little irritating, but it's something we got used to. Admittedly, Nichibutsu symbols are so prevalent in their games that there's no mistaking it as a Nichibutsu title, even after just hearing it for the first time. On the other side of things, the Famicom and NES versions of the game are remarkably close to the arcade version as well, with obvious shortcomings to the visuals, sound, and aspect ratio. But it's still solid. It was found when looking into footage from both that, like Tecmo's Star Force, the NES version of Terra Cresta has slightly better audio. The alternate respawn jingles are also maintained. All in all, Terra Cresta's series evolution was its greatest here for quite some time, but the best was yet to come. Chapter 3: Terra Cresta 2: Mandler's Counterattack. Terra Cresta 2: Mandler's Counterattack is a console-exclusive sequel to the original Terra Cresta, released in Japan and only for the PC Engine in 1992. Terra Cresta 2 takes what the original Terra Cresta laid out and amps it up with even more features that not only make it more playable, but also far more ingenious than its predecessors. The biggest overhaul is how formations are handled. Sure, the player can just dive right in and take care of business, but they also have the option to fine-tune and configure the positions and fire direction of each craft in every formation type, from 2 ships all the way to 5. Without spoiling too much, this customizability is the best the series would ever see, and it's fun as hell figuring out new and improved placement and fire patterns with every play. Like Terra Cresta before it, various ship segments can be released and collected from various flying capsules, and 3 formation charges will be granted to the player. These charges will be replenished with each part collected, but unlike the first game, additional formation items can be collected outside of ship parts. Once again, certain enemies will need to be attacked with formation shots in order to be destroyed. However, even when formation attacks are not available, the player can launch a small Firebird ring by pressing the formation button, so long as parts have been docked to the player's ship. It deals moderate damage, which is handy. But of course, there's more. There are also special flashing formation items that will clear the screen with a huge spiral Firebird attack, so long as the player's formation stock is full, and cause the player's formation stock to flash when collected. This will enable a special Firebird formation that changes according to how many ship parts have been collected in total. These formations are super powerful and can deal significant damage to bosses in specific. As with the first game, forming up with all 5 parts will transform the player's ship into a burning Firebird, complete with an 8-way spread shot. This absurdly powerful form can even one-shot bosses if it can be carefully timed. The parts players collect will once again also act as armor, allowing players a chance to progress and rearm without dying if they end up getting hit by a bullet. However, it is still possible for the player to be completely killed off by enemies and attacks if they're caught in formation. If a player does lose a life, they'll simply respawn immediately, and if fast enough, parts that were equipped at death can be collected once again. It can be dicey, but the risk is often worth it for a quick recovery. Terra Cresta 2 also gives players direct control over their craft's speed by using the select button. Players can cycle between 4 different speed levels at will, which allows the player to better navigate the screen at a rate that better suits them. Terra Cresta 2's flow is also significantly different. For one, it's played over the course of 6 stages broken into 2 phases apiece. In addition to the stage end boss, a mid-boss will have to be dealt with before the second phase. This makes for a rather long game, but not as long as others in the series before or since. And again, if the player dies, there are no longer checkpoints to contend with. However, if game over occurs, the player will restart at various reach checkpoints rather than stage start. Terra Cresta 2 isn't terribly complicated with its scoring, but does feature some neat bonuses to get the player's numbers up fairly high. Most notable is the ability to catch enemies with bits of part containers. Timing can be difficult, but when a parts container is shot, its pieces will fly out horizontally. Any enemies caught and killed by them will result in a 10,000 point bonus for each one. This is very similar to the air mines in the original Terra Cresta, though much more common. Collecting normal formation items with a full stock also grants 10,000 points. Terra Cresta 2 also has a fairly forgiving extend score, so it shouldn't take very long at all for players to get extra lives to deal with their opposition. Terra Cresta 2 also features a caravan mode, which gives players a 5-minute time limit to score as much as possible before time is up. A 2-minute mode also exists. The player scores can be checked in the score option in the main menu. Changing things up from a 3:4 aspect ratio to a 4:3 one hasn't diminished the impact of Terra Cresta 2's visuals. In fact, we'd wager that Terra Cresta 2 is arguably the best looking of the bunch. If not for the whole series, then definitely from 1997 and before. Clear graphics, cool ship and enemy design, some awesome looking stages, and great sense of style gives Terra Cresta 2 a solid edge visually. Add to that a great soundtrack with several standout pieces, and Terra Cresta 2's presentation really nails it. Better still, a full sound test is accessible right on the outset of the game in the main menu. All in all, we really do feel as if Terra Cresta 2 is the apex of the series, but it comes at a cost. PC Engine copies often sell with prices reaching into extreme amounts, meaning only the most die-hard fans will want to actually buy it. Flashcards are your friends though, unless Hamster comes around with that rumored console archives line. Chapter 4, Terra Cresta 3D. Terra Cresta 3D is, as the name implies, a polygonal follow-up and console-exclusive entry to the series released only in Japan for the Sega Saturn in 1997. It would be Nichibutsu's final shooting game. In a lot of ways, Terra Cresta 3D is almost a complete series regression, something that stings especially hard as this is the game that directly followed up Terra Cresta 2. The hard change from a 2D graphics engine to a 3D one doesn't necessarily mean that a game will be bad. Just look at Thunder Force. But Terra Cresta 3D? Well, that's another story. Played at a slanted visual angle similar to Xevious 3DG or Star Soldier Vanishing Earth, both of which were 3D follow-ups to 2D classics, Terra Cresta 3D simplifies literally everything about the game. Its enemies are easy to read, it has only 3 parts to its ship, and only features 6 single-phase stages punctuated with a boss encounter. Of these, every second boss changes the perspective to one reminiscent of Star Fox, albeit with the player's ship hugging the ground. This shift from Y-scroll to Z-scroll, but with Y-scroll-centric controls, is jarring to say the very least, and can really be difficult to properly navigate when bullets start flying. The player shots are also on the slow side. They're rather weak in Terra Cresta 3D, and the rapid rate is very slow. However, by pressing the A and C buttons in a rapid alternating fashion on the Saturn pad, the player can ramp up their firepower immensely. Fiddling with the turbo potentiometer on the Saturn arcade stick yielded even better fire rates. Yippee-ki-yay, Terra Cresta! Even the formations leave a bit to be desired, though to its credit, Terra Cresta 3D does allow players to change from a forward-oriented wave attack to a homing laser attack a la Ray Force without using up formation items. As is typically the case, docking with a new ship replenishes these items. The Firebird does make a return though, with a 3-ship combination resulting in a somewhat brief, screen-filling Phoenix attack that makes for a rather impressive, and admittedly satisfying, screen clearer. Of course, being that the Saturn is somewhat underwhelming in terms of performance with its 3D titles compared to its 2D ones, the action often bogs down when the player fires their weapons, especially with multiple enemy waves on screen. On the one hand, Terra Cresta 3D might make a good entry point for new players, but on the other, its dull pace and complete lack of scoring of any kind is sure to limit whatever appeal it had left. I won't say it's a terrible game though, it's just mediocre. And much more could have been done with the resources the Saturn offered. As stated before, Terra Cresta 3D has no scoring system, it's played purely for survival. Let's move on. When it comes to Terra Cresta 3D's presentation, what we have here is what we in the biz call a mixed bag. It doesn't look entirely terrible, but the stippled transparency effects are definitely a little on the gross side of things given their frequent use on nearly everything. Add to that some jittery polygons and you get a game that tries its best to look decent, but doesn't quite get there. It does feature a number of neat looking stages though, and the player ship design isn't terrible. We will say though that the soundtrack, while a little humdrum at times, is definitely the game's standout feature. Most of the tracks here I can get behind. All in all, for the prices Terra Cresta 3D currently boasts, comparatively few people are likely to get their money's worth. Still, as a passing curiosity, or maybe a what-if conversation piece, it might still be worth throwing into a mode or a satiator. Chapter 5. Sol Cresta. After a rather lengthy 25 years, the Cresta series returns with Sol Cresta, developed by Platinum Games and published worldwide by Hamster on Tuesday the 22nd of February 2022, for the PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and Windows PC. It's been a long time coming, and while some thought it was little more than a well-played and elaborate April Fool's Day joke, it turns out that an all-new, full-fledged, deep Cresta experience was indeed on the way. And that day has finally come to pass after an 11th hour delay. Let's take a closer look. Things have been shaken up quite a bit in Sol Cresta when compared to Terra Cresta and its sequels, but the same could be said of Terra Cresta compared to Moon Cresta too. Sol Cresta's gameplay has a little in common with all of the previous Cresta games we've seen so far. It features a dockable 3-ship formation like Moon Cresta and Terra Cresta 3D. It has 8-way movement like all of the Terra Cresta games, and it has a dedicated stage set like Terra Cresta 2 and 3D. But beyond this, Sol Cresta shakes things up considerably from every other entry so far. The Amato consists of 3 ships, each of which on its own has rather weak firepower. Additional ships can be called forth by collecting the appropriately colored Sol emblem, and as the subsequent yellow and blue ships are brought into the fray and docked, the player's firepower will increase significantly. With all 3 ships in play, additional Sol emblems will change to shield emblems, which add a layer of defense to the player's formation. These are indicated in a stock displayed under the player's score. Shields allow the Amato to sustain a hit from anything at all without its parts getting destroyed. However, with no shields in play, the player's ships can be destroyed fairly easily until none are left, resulting in a life lost. However, destroyed units can be recovered with additional Sol emblems. Players can also split their docked ship apart and reform at will. Depending where each ship is located vertically is how they'll reform, with the highest ship taking point. When docked up, the red ship will fire a spread laser, blue a powerful missile attack, and yellow will launch drills downrange. Unsurprisingly, it goes further. The trailing ship in the formation will put down intermittent supporting fire, while the center ship allows a charge boosted attack to be performed so long as the player has power in their SP gauge found on the left-hand side of the screen by default. The SP gauge is made up of 3 gauges, which allows for several techniques to be used one after another. These gauges are filled by attacking and defeating enemy units. Changing formations is going to be an integral part of efficient progress in Sol Cresta, generally speaking. A number of item boxes will be found throughout the game which can only be destroyed by fire shot from the matching color ship. Red for red, blue for blue, yellow for yellow. Some enemies and obstacles require certain colored fire to destroy, and in many cases Sol emblems, Sol coins, and formation chips will be released for players to collect as they do so. This is where things get really spicy. Formation chips can be collected and added to a matrix on the left-hand side of the screen. Each allows for a special formation attack to be performed if players position their ships in a certain manner, then hold the formation button. Delta, Cyclone, Beam, Sweep, and Moon formation attacks can really give the player a much-needed edge in hot situations, and while the control is a little finicky to get these formations to trigger, once the player gets used to the system it becomes invaluable. There are even formation attacks for 2 ships if one gets knocked out of play. These formation chips can be cycled through when shot, and if all can be collected, a 6th formation opens up, allowing for the famed Firebird attack. It somehow goes even further with the addition of command shots. Activated by filling the Sol gauge on the right-hand side of the screen with Sol coins, command shots depend on fighting game style inputs like quarter circle, full circle, up-down, or down-up, plus the shot button. These attacks can be useful for crowd control or tricky destructibles, especially directly behind or beside the player. Even if the player is left with a solo ship, these command shots can be used, in addition to a screw maneuver that allows players to avoid a hit at the cost of half an SP bar. It's all very robust, and with a little practice and skill, all of these aspects become very intuitive despite being very complicated. All told, Sol Cresta is easily the most engaging entry in the whole series just from a feature standpoint. Beefing up the Sol gauge through Sol coin collection also adds a number of other features, power enhancements, extra shield slots, score boosts, and even extends outside of the typical score-based ones, adding even more flexibility to the gameplay. It's a real blast. Played over the course of 7 stages, each area has multiple difficulties and can even be immediately selected at any time once they're opened up, which gives players a great opportunity to practice them without having to go through the rest of the game first. Each of these stages is rather lengthy and features powerful mid and stage end bosses, some of which switch roles from stage to stage. Some of these fights can take a while to complete, but with proper formation and command attack deployment, they should be fairly manageable. For those looking for a bit of narrative to their Sol Cresta experience, the Dramatic Mode DLC introduces characters and plot to the mix, as well as slightly remixing the stages in the game. It's generally a little easier, but will also last considerably longer from beginning to end, on the order of hours. That's a lot of plot. Just don't skip certain story scenes between stages. You'll sometimes miss out on huge amounts of soul coins, something we discovered on our live stream the hard way. And that's just about it. Nah, just kidding, there's still even more. Achievements can be earned for various exploits throughout the player's time with the game, even on the Nintendo Switch. However, these achievements also have points attached which contribute to a gauge that unlocks new features, such as a sound test, caravan, and score attack modes, just to name a few. We thought it strange that these modes weren't immediately available, but it makes a bit more sense when we thought about it. Play the main game to get some experience under your belt and get used to the mechanics, and you'll be much better equipped to take on the online leaderboards when they open up. In the end, it's all so robust, it's almost silly, and for better or for worse, I have to admit that I had an unreasonable amount of fun with Sol Cresta so far. Fast-paced and flexible, it's as engaging as it comes. However, it has to be mentioned that the Switch version of the game runs considerably worse than the PC version. We're not sure about PlayStation 4, as we won't be getting it until the limited run games release happens, but suffice it to say, if you can stay away from the Switch version, do it. Not only is there a cut in the frame rate, there's also some input delay which, surprisingly, is reduced in Tate mode for some reason or another. Playing in Tate is something we normally enjoy doing, but it's just too bad then that the game looks considerably worse in this mode, something we'll touch on later. PC is the clear confirmed winner here, and while we didn't play the PlayStation 4 version because this game is like $70 for us here in Canada, and even just 2 versions was pretty painful on the wallet, we imagine, like most other games, that PlayStation 4 should perform at least better than Switch if not as good as PC. But for us, that's unconfirmed until this gets here. Speaking of robust, Sol Cresta is easily the most score-intensive entry in the series to date. It actually has more in common to a caravan-style title such as Star Soldier or the Hurricane of Varstray, where a great number of extra score points, bonuses, and secrets contribute to the player's score in big ways. Collecting Sol emblems past maximum shield, hoarding Sol coins, building up the Sol gauge through multiple gauge loops, taking out various enemy waves, and uncovering secret bonuses worth 10,000 or even 100,000 points will get players to their next extends in a pretty timely fashion. Players will also notice a number of rings around every stage that correspond to the 3 ship colors. Passing through with a color that doesn't match will result in about 100 points. But if the ship on point matches, it results in a bonus that is considerably higher. Coming to terms with how the formations in Sol Cresta operate will make hitting all of these rings much easier. Certain bonuses can also change, so making sure to catch everything that can give the player points while maintaining a full roster of ships and shields will get the player many more points. Even air mines make a return, which can lead to a flurry of 1,000 point bonuses for every enemy taken out with them. Really, there's so much to the scoring that we could be here for way longer than we really have time for. But suffice it to say, those looking for a great score chase will find it in Sol Cresta. Once the score attack options open up, the replay of Sol Cresta goes from decent to excellent. Single stage, all stage, caravan, with so many ways to play, whether it be for survival or for score, there really is a mode here for everyone.
2 on, number 3, 4 off, number 5, 6, 7, 8 on. Confirmed.
Yamato, interim recorder on.
Permission to sortie?
Permission granted. Good luck, Yamato.
Here's where we run into a bit of a sticky wicket though. While the gameplay here is truly excellent, on PC at least, one thing we can't ignore is the game's presentation. Let's get the good stuff out of the way. Sol Cresta has an awesome soundtrack. Composed by Yuzo Koshiro, the tone is bouncy, generally speaking. There's some great stuff in this OST with standout after standout. Admittedly, it doesn't sound especially Cresta, but there are a number of flourishes like respawn jingles that change on the final life and Moon Cresta jingles for the largest bonuses in the game. Slick. Also totally rad and way closer to the source material, the original Terra Cresta stage BGM, but in a completely minor key, including the respawn jingle. Amazing. The dramatic mode also has decent voice delivery, though with no English dub, it could be a bit of a distraction having to read the provided subtitles. Still, it's nowhere near as irritating as Raiden 5. No coffee talk, no worries. But there is one worry. Those graphics are rough. Like, jaggy, uneven, and badly scaled rough. I thought we were past this by now, but evidently not. Things are going to look like a bit of an eyesore, especially on the Switch. We tried changing things up to Tate mode on both PC and Switch, but it just made things worse. It didn't just not fix it, it friggin' doubled down and amplified the eyesore factor. There's a reason for this though. Sol Cresta's visuals are actually largely 3D, but filtered to look like they're 2D. It's just that the filter isn't especially good looking. And it's so odd too, seeing as the intro, CG movie, UI elements, and menus all look great, even sporting that signature Nichibutsu classic font for the player's score, next extend indicator, and local leaderboards. They really should have just gone with unfiltered 3D. Speaking of intros, it's a real treat to see how the games in the Cresta series that we just took a look at led up to the events of Sol Cresta. Oh, but poor Terra Cresta 3D, it doesn't even get a passing mention. It arguably looks better. Rounding it all out, the menus are simple and effective, though the title screen is a little sparse. And the achievement-centric, unlockable extras through both the core game and DLC are great. With all of that said though, just how does Sol Cresta stack up? Let's take a look. Generally speaking, the control in Sol Cresta is spot on, but it can be tricky getting the hang of the formation setups, especially in spicy situations. With multiple difficulties available for players of all skill levels, Sol Cresta has a great difficulty balance and a good curve throughout the whole game. Just watch out for physical barriers. Weighing in at 7 stages, Sol Cresta will take a while to chew through. With an even greater length in the dramatic mode and unlockable caravan and score attack modes, there's a huge amount of game to play here. Easily the weakest part of Sol Cresta, its visuals are jagged, poorly scaled, and too shimmery for their own good. At least it's mitigated on PC though. This could probably be fixed with a patch. The audio, on the other hand, is pretty great throughout the entire game. Yuzo Koshiro still has it, and the classic jingles from Moon Cresta and Terra Cresta work for us. The Cresta series has never been as complicated as it is in Sol Cresta, but it also becomes rather intuitive with minimal practice, and it feels great. It stuffs a ton of little ingenious features into a dense package that has a surprising amount of depth. With a moderate price tag, multiple copies of this game might be a little hard on the wallet. It was for us, that's for sure. We recommend going for PC with this one if you have the option. Switch should be a last resort. Still, it sports a great value. This has been a huge undertaking, and an expensive one at that, but to see the whole series through for this special review is about as fulfilling as I could have hoped. There were some awesome highs and some rather unexpected lows, but in the end, the Cresta series should be played by all in some form or another. As far as Sol Cresta goes, its gross visuals can't spoil the amazing gameplay and sound that Platinum has put together, at least on PC. Given this, Sol Cresta on PC is highly recommended. You can get Sol Cresta on Steam, the PlayStation Network, and the Nintendo Switch eShop, but avoid the Switch version if at all possible. Links below. So how about it? Could we do other series like this one? I have plans to do Image Fight, but what others would be cool? No Gradius though, there's too much that's either lost or MSX-centric. We'll see you all in the next episode.